Are people starting to change their perception of what it is for people in recovery? Because as we talked about the stigma for so many years, when people like Ed Kirby get up at the event and talk about his son dying, and people relate to Ed and see the story and know people just like that, know families like that, or they have people within their own family. As more and more people can relate to this, is that helping to do away with the stigma?
Absolutely. And I mean, from my perspective, I'm going to go to the Spark Coalition, because I believe that, if you take a look at what the mission of the Spark Coalition has been, in terms of education and, looking at treatment continuum, a key thing that has never wavered is the work that we all need to do on reducing the stigma attached to substance use disorder. And I mean, we both give an awful lot of credit for that to John Bernardi. He has really, he calls him the Godfather, and I just call, John is the guy who's there who just never says no. And what can I do to help?
John is the executive director of the United Way and also the chair of
the Spark Coalition,
which is the coalition in the county of all walks of life, business leaders, community leaders who came together a few years ago to tackle this.
He's the perfect person to head up this coalition and to really help us make stigma reduction a reality. It's not just a nice thought, but we're doing it.
I think the other thing about stigma is you really do begin to realize that oftentimes we think the stigma is only a one-way street. People who have not been afflicted with this stigmatize the people who have been afflicted with it. The people who've been afflicted with it for many years have also stayed in the shadows for a variety of different reasons. And what we're beginning to see now is people are, not that anybody wants to become the poster child for the recovery movement, but we're no longer afraid to say, I'm in recovery. I struggled with addiction for years and I went and did this and I got my life together and now I have a good life. And I think as society begins to see that your neighbors, the people who live right next door to you, the people who you work with, many of them are in recovery and you may never know. Because it's not, we don't wear it, we're just out there living our lives enjoying what goes on. So I think that the more of that we can get out there in the community, the better we are for everybody.
And you mentioned the majority of the folks living in the dorms are in various stages of recovery. You're also helping other families and people who are having issues with mental health issues or with homelessness?
Yeah, we're really focused on the addiction piece because that's what we're familiar with, and that was kind of how we set it up. But we're also looking at people that fall into the Alice category. Somebody who might come out of a domestic violence situation and doesn't necessarily have a drug problem but not somewhere to live. Somebody who has a mental health issue first, maybe it's a dual diagnosis, but mental health being the primary. So we're open to all of those things. The caveat for us, at least in our dorm, is we want it to be drug and alcohol free. So we did have a young woman who applied who just fell into the Alice category. She did not have a diagnosed mental illness or a substance use disorder, but she just couldn't afford to live where she was living. And she found other arrangements, but we accepted her. We were going to allow her, because we want to make sure that we're not becoming so segregated that we're only dealing with one specific population. What we're really trying to do is eradicate the vulnerable population that we have here. And much of that is due to alcohol and drugs and mental health, but there are other things that come into play. We want to make sure that we embrace helping those people if we can as well.
And when we talk about Alice, the United Way did a study. Alice refers to people that their income is limited, but they are employed, but that about 40% consistently across the North Country of families are living in the situation where if they have a really big expense, a medical bill, they lose a vehicle to a large repair or something like that. Car breakdown. They can be in financial straits real quickly and face a crisis. And that a lot of families are living in that situation where if something happens, they could suddenly find themselves in a real difficult position.
And what's happened in the past when that typically happens is if they're not able to pay their rent or their mortgage and they lose their place to live, then they wind up calling the hotline. And the hotline puts them into one of the homeless shelters here that try to do the best they can, but obviously that's a tough environment. We would like to be able to maybe precipitate that from happening. So we might be able to jump in before that happens and help them with a place to live for some short period of time until they can find other accommodations.
And as far as the recovery campus, The state OASIS did come through with funding for the first year. Will that be consistent, or will this be a difficult thing for you and the partners? Will you constantly be looking for grants and funding to keep the program going?
I'm going to be challenged to keep looking for funding to keep the Recovery Community Center moving. I'm fairly secure in about 18 months worth of funding, and we'll certainly be talking to the commissioner. We will be talking to politicians, because we're going to be able to show them the difference that we're making in the community with a really small amount of money.
And the commissioner says these types of recovery campuses are working.
Oh, yes.
They're in communities across New York, and
That's right.
they're making a difference.
She was clear when she offered her comments at the open house that they are. And you know, keeping them alive and vibrant it's a task. And you know, I'm sure this community, as well as Champlain Valley Family Center, will do everything that we can to keep that open and to really provide all ways to recovery.
I will assure you that so because we can use the dining hall piece as a conference center, and we've went to many of the agencies and said, would you be willing to host conferences here? We can provide food and things like that. That will be another stream of revenue. If the recovery center goes like I believe it will, under Connie and Dennis's guidance, money will be the issue that won't close it. We will figure out a way to make sure that the recovery center stays open if it's providing the benefit for our residents in the community that we all believe it is.
Yeah.
And it would be a shame to think that money would be the thing that would cause somebody to lose their life or not be able to recover if they want to. So I'm confident as the president of MHAB that we will figure out a way to work it out with Connie and her team to make sure that they stay a part of that recovery campus.
And as you look back a year ago, again, we were just talking about all this, hoping that this would happen. Now a year later, to have Schuyler Falls open, to have an 18-bed facility there, to have this facility up and running for 6 months, helping 90 people living in the dorms already. How satisfying is that for both of you?
Go ahead.
It's, I would tell you that I'm tired. It's rewarding. It's heart-wrenching at times because everybody's not a success. But for me, and I said in the open house, and I say this before, I've buried way too many people that I've gotten close to, and I'll be incredibly satisfied when we get to a place where we're not doing that anymore. So yes, I'm satisfied with the accomplishments that we've made. I think we're doing things, but as Ed Kirby says every time he finishes his speech, there's way more that we need to keep doing until we get really on top of this. So yeah, I'm satisfied, but I'm not ready to rest and say we've done what we should do. We have a lot more work to do.
I couldn't agree more. I'm 65 years old, and you know, a lot of people think about retirement at that age. I'm not, because of just the comment Mike just made. There is so much more to do in our community. I can't tell you how satisfying it is to have Schuyler Falls up and running, serving people that need that service that historically we couldn't help them. You know, they were heading off to Albany, or they were heading off to Canton Potsdam or Gouverneur, or they were heading someplace to get high. We can now help those people. And now our new Recovery Community Center is going to help anybody. All you got to do is just walk in the front door. I mean, that's it. And talk to us and let us help you. And so there's lots more things that need to be done in our community, Tom, and that's why at 65 I have no plans on retiring. I mean, well, no, it is. It's such rewarding work when you see the outcomes that we're seeing and see the changes in people that you knew could be there all along. And to play, you know, that little bit of a part in it is absolutely inspiring.
This is a big step forward.
And I would echo that we have a lot to do. I want this place to be the place that everybody looks to and says, why are they able to do this and how did they do it? And then I want them to come and ask us, and for the two of us and all the other agencies to sit and say, we did this because we sat together and said, what are we going to do in the interest of helping this vulnerable population? That for me is the goal.
And so this is a huge step forward for people living in the North Country.
Absolutely. And for our neighboring counties. I mean, for Franklin and Essex, I mean, there's new opportunities for people to receive help.
We have people from all over the state living actually in the dorms. We've had people from Binghamton and Western New York, and so it's even more than regional. And we thought originally it would be Clinton, maybe Clinton, Essex, Franklin. It's typically all over. Many of them came through the Schuyler Falls Recovery Center first, and then came here before they went home.